God of War has recently become one of my favourite franchises in gaming, starting off all the way back in 2018 with God of War 2018, and then going to God of War Ragnarok, and now of course finishing with God of War Ragnarok Valhalla. I've loved every single second of playing through these games. The lore-rich universe that God of War has created, going from the Greek days going into Norse mythology, and ending with a bit of a mixture with Kratos sort of finding himself again and becoming one with himself and being content with who he used to be as compared to who he is now. And that was a fantastic story progression for me. But I wanted to spend a bit of time today because I've done 3 videos on these God of War games explaining the stories. But what I wanted to do is put them all into one, just so you can have one video which goes into detail with God of War from 2018, going all the way through back to back till the end of Valhalla, and just go from there, explaining the stories in that way, and potentially from that way we can form some form of theory as to where the next God of War game, mythology-wise, is going to be. Now, I've made many God of War videos theorizing on where the next God of War could potentially be, and I'll leave a playlist link down below in the description. But there are so many different possibilities that Valhalla has hinted at, Ragnarok has hinted at, so it's just up in the air for discussion. But as I mentioned, this video is solely going to be explaining the entirety of all 3 games' stories, and then at the end of it we can kind of go into it in a bit more detail. But I hope you guys are going to enjoy today's video. Leave a like down below if you do, and why not, whilst you're down there, leave a comment as to where you think the next God of War mythology is going to be. And of course, what did you think of the God of War 2018 and Ragnarok games, and then the free DLC Valhalla? Leave your theories and suggestions down below. But without further ado, everyone, let's dive straight in to the explained. God of War 2018 is based in a place called Midgard, in which Faye, Kratos and Atreus all live in a cabin just on the outer skirts. For the majority of the time, Kratos would always be away, hunting for food and supplies and attempting to figure out how to handle and control his rage, whilst Faye would remain at home with Atreus, teaching him how to read and write the various languages of the different gods and the different realms, as well as skills he would need for hunting and tracking further on down the line. Although, one of the things that are unknown to us currently as of now, and we may learn more going into Ragnarok, is exactly how and when Faye died. It looked as though it happened just before the game took place, which looked fairly recent, with her being wrapped up fully within her cabin. So if we find out more in Ragnarok, I will bring a video to the channel. Kratos was seen cutting down a birch tree nearby, in which Faye had specifically marked as the one that she wanted Kratos to use to cremate her body. The log was transported back to the cabin and Kratos would cut it up and ready the fire, in which Faye would be placed on top and her soul sent to the afterlife. This would mark step 1 of Faye's overall plan, and the journey between the God of War and her son. Faye's final wish for Kratos and Atreus was to take her ashes to the highest peak of the mountain and scatter them across the lands. This was ultimately the aim of the game from the beginning and the motivation for the journey that you take on. However, Kratos was very hard on Atreus throughout, not believing that he was ready at all, and trying his hardest to not turn him into the monster that he once was back in Sparta. After their hunting expedition took place and finalised, they both returned back to the cabin, with Kratos refusing to embark on the journey due to him feeling that Atreus was not ready for the challenge. However, not only this, Atreus had been sick for a very long period of time predating the game. This will be explained a little bit further on as we get into the game. However, out of nowhere, there was suddenly a knock on the cabin door. The boy hides under the cabin in a place where Kratos specifically mentioned to Atreus to never ever go, so you know this is serious. They were in a highly protected area of Midgard, so who could this be at the door? Kratos opens the door and there stands a man completely covered in tattoos, who began questioning him out of nowhere. The stranger refused to leave and Kratos snaps, beating him in the process. But to Kratos' surprise, this did nothing, and the stranger shows us his sheer strength by sending Kratos flying over the cabin. The two fight it out, and throughout, the stranger is constantly asking Kratos to tell him what he wants to know, but Kratos is none the wiser as to what he's referring to. However, it's later revealed that Odin had sent this stranger to find Kratos and to find something out. Still, we don't know what that is at that time. We finally finish the fight, snapping the neck of the stranger and throwing him down into the cavern that we had created during the fight. Kratos still isn't sure who this man is, but does say, "How does he know me? Do they know my past? And how have they found me after all of this time?" We return to the cabin and have no choice but to start the journey, even if Kratos believes that Atreus is not ready. It was around this stage that we began to learn more around exactly what Atreus knows about his father's past. Atreus mentions to Kratos that, "What do they want with us nobodies?" alluding to him not knowing anything at all. Kratos and Faye never told Atreus about his past. He doesn't know about his place of origin, his past life, or that he's a god in general. They didn't want Atreus to make the same mistake as his father, and wanted the boy to only fight for good. So they grab their belongings and begin to make their way to the very top of the mountain. A short time later, as we're finding our path to the top, Atreus decides to test his bow skills. In doing so, he shoots and penetrates a hog, and begins to chase after it. However, as we do catch up with Atreus, we find that this was a magical hog who lived near a witch named Freya. Freya used her magic to revive this hog, and whilst doing so, she pulled Kratos to one side and mentioned that she knew that he was a god, and that the other gods within the different realms did not take kindly to new gods in Midgard. However, she herself knew of the motivations of Kratos and Atreus, so the witch placed a spell on them both to safeguard them on their journey, using some form of protection rune, protecting them from all of those who might not agree with them being there, aka the gods of the other realms. We continue our journey and progress across a large abandoned lake, and come across a statue of Odin. It's within this time that Atreus mentions that his mother Faye used to speak all the time about the gods when she was here. Kratos takes the time to ask if she'd ever spoken about a god that could feel no pain, aka the stranger at the beginning of the game. Atreus says that his name is Balder, an Aesir god, and that he's the son of Odin. Anyway, we progress on through to the lake, and we pass a room which tells us to throw our weapons into the water. In doing this, a giant serpent appears out of nowhere, which goes by the name of the World Serpent. It's so big that it can wrap itself around the entirety of the world, and even bite its own tail in doing so. Atreus then mentions that Faye said the serpent was friendly, and that once they surrendered their weapons, it revealed a temple that was completely submerged in the water before. It turns out that we use this temple to access areas of the mountain, and also to travel to the different realms. However, as we climb to the very top of the mountain, fast forwarding quite a bit here, we hear the voices of Balder, aka the stranger we fought at the start, and a new character we've not met before, called Mimir. Mimir was imprisoned in a tree by Odin over 109 winters ago, regularly tortured with nothing that he could really do about it, even going to the extent of removing one of his eyes to prevent him from travelling to realm, which again we'll come to later. Mimir is also known as the smartest man alive. It was here that Kratos and Atreus found that the mountaintop was in fact not the highest peak in the land, and that this highest peak could only be found in one realm in particular. This was known as the Lost Realm of Jotunheim. Mimir knows of a way to get into Jotunheim, however it requires the use of a rune. This rune is a very small part of a chisel that was owned by a giant called Thamor. It was at this point that we learnt that Thor went on a killing spree, killing all of the remaining people and the giants in this area for absolutely no reason at all, other than Odin's love for bloodshed. This giant has lay here for a very long time. We progress through and carve a piece of the chisel when we meet our first two named gods, Magni and Modi. We fight and kill Magni whilst Modi runs off in fear. However, in the midst of all of this, Atreus falls ill, really ill. We have to return him to Freya immediately, and this is when the reasoning behind his illness was in fact revealed. Atreus is a god. The reason he is ill is because he's trying to hide what he really is. The god inside him is fighting with his mortal self, essentially almost killing him from the inside just because he doesn't know this secret. Freya helps the boy, and Kratos eventually starts to open up more to Atreus, telling the boy of his true nature. We then move on to the conversation of Balder being a god and why he's essentially hunting Kratos. Kratos responds and says that the first time he'd ever seen Balder was at Faye's funeral, which is really interesting. Why would he be at Faye's funeral? However, in this section of the game, Atreus starts to bring out other sides to him, knowing that he's a god, thinking that he's better than everyone else now, disrespecting people that we meet along the way, and he's just turned into someone that you want to fly kick out of a window. We finally reach the top of the mountain with the chisel piece and the rune that we need, and as we try to open the portal to Jotunheim, there's Balder. Kratos and him get into a fight and essentially break the portal, with Atreus even going to the extent of shooting Kratos in the stomach as he thinks that he could take on Baldur himself. This is literally the extent of how cocky this kid got, and it really done my head in through the playthrough. Baldur grabs Atreus and jumps off the mountain onto a dragon, and of course Kratos follows. All of them then end up in the temple where they can transport to different realms, where Baldur was trying to send them all to Asgard, the home of Thor and Odin. However, if they did, the entirety of that realm would push straight into the temple, trying to kill them all. Kratos managed to switch the realms, and all of them ended up in the realm of the dead, called Helheim. Helheim is a place where people that die don't go into the afterlife of Valhalla. They're then put into Helheim if they die of old age, or if they die a criminal. It was here that they found that Baldur's mother was in fact Freya, the Witch of the Woods. Freya cast a spell on Baldur to never allow him to feel pain, and he hated that. It essentially made him immortal and never be able to feel anything. In the vision that he had, he was going to kill her, but he eventually cowered out of doing that, vowing to never see her again. We progress through Helheim and move into the palace overtaken by Odin at the end. Here we find a piece of a missing plaque, revealing that Tyr, the god of the people, was friendly with the giants, which was extremely unusual at the time. Tyr forged a secret to travel between realms between realms in fact, and this is one of the ways that they hid the Jotunheim Tower. In very, very high level, Odin essentially wanted all of the giants to be dead, and that's why he killed Thamor and all of the people around there. So in order to save them, Tyr hid this doorway to get into Jotunheim, and that's why that doorway is missing. However, Tyr was the only person that knew where it was and could get to Jotunheim to communicate with the giants and to try and make sure they're safe. So as we progress in further, we learn that the temple that we use to travel between realms can in fact be flipped upside down, revealing a secret doorway into Jotunheim. However, it was without a crystal in order to open it, so there was no power going to this doorway. But if we go back a little bit further into the story, we can see that Tyr actually had 2 glass eyes, and the head of Mimir, which we're taking with us, also has glass eyes. However, one of them was missing at the time. This was because, of course, Odin removed his second eye to prevent him from travelling, like we mentioned earlier on. Now, in order to be able to go into the doors of Jotunheim, we need this second glass eye back. Now, moving even further back into the story at the beginning, when we first summoned the World Serpent. As soon as we did that, he basically destroyed and ate a statue of Thor, because they just do not get along at all. We then summon the World Serpent again, who mentions that the statue is still in his stomach, and that he's not fond of the idea, but he's going to allow us to drive in there in a boat, get this eye in, go straight back out. We grabbed the glass eye, and then we suddenly tried to make our way out of the serpent. However, there were some problems on the outside. We're suddenly spat out of the serpent, and Faye turns up out of nowhere. She mentions that she's here for her son, and she's trying to rekindle their relationship in some way, or try and repair the bridges that were burnt. But then Baldur comes out of nowhere, surprised to see Faye, and not really being as apologetic or as caring as what we thought maybe. Kratos and Baldur fight as we predicted they probably would, with Faye trying her absolute utmost to stop them and protect her son, and even went to the extent of reviving and summoning the giant Thamor from the dead to help try and prevent this fight from taking place. It was here that there was an arrow that Atreus had used to strap up his quill that had broken previously. That arrow had penetrated Baldur's hand. It was a shock arrow that was given to us by a dwarf near the start of the game, and Faye mentioned specifically when she'd seen the arrows that they were extremely dangerous and that we'd promised to essentially never ever use them again, so she'd confiscated them and gave us some replacement shock arrows. Now we understand why she was so against them. So if the arrow penetrated Baldur in any way, then it would have broken the spell, and that means that he'd be able to feel the likes of pain, feel exactly what's happening around him. This was enough to take Baldur down, and Kratos really took advantage of that. We end this section with Faye essentially saying to Baldur to kill her if it would make him happier, and if it would repair any bridges that were recently burnt. However, Kratos was not allowed this to happen, snapping Baldur's neck once and for all, and ending that chapter. However, Faye was extremely enraged by this, and swore to Kratos that she would inflict hell on him, and that this would not be the last time that he would see her. I think she'll be a big part of Ragnarok, let's just put it that way. Faye walks away with Baldur in her arms and that's it. We don't see her again. We return back to the temple and finally enter the realm of Jotunheim. We push across the giant bridge and into the temple on top of the mountains. No giants being present, all slain by Thor and just statues present. However, as Atreus brushes past one of the walls, so much is revealed and explained.
It's your axe. It's Mother. Look. She's arguing with a bunch of giants. She knew giants? That's us. The first time we met the world serpent. But how? And our fight with Baldur. But that just happened. Wait. They knew everything that was going to happen. The dragon in the mountain, the stone mason, all these drawings. This is our story.
No. This is your story.
But what does it all mean?
That I was not the only parent with secrets.
You didn't know. She was a giant. I'm a giant. Why didn't she tell us?
She sent us here knowing we would find this.
But why not just tell us the truth?
Your mother would have had good reasons. Baldur was never sent to find me. He was tracking her all along, not knowing she was only ashes.
If she had a plan for us, I trust it. Whatever it is. Besides, she hasn't been wrong yet. Come on. We're so close to the end now.
The giants knew everything that was going to happen, like absolutely everything, all absolutely years before, with markings on the wall, all showing the boy's story. So it turns out that Faye was in fact a giant. Atreus isn't just a god, but he's also a giant and a mortal. Faye sent both Kratos and Atreus here, knowing that this is where they would end up, encountering Mimir on the top of the mountain, getting the rune to access Jotunheim, and finding out that she was a giant. Baldur was never tracking Kratos at all. He knew that Faye was a giant all this time. This would explain why he was seen at her funeral and why he thought Kratos knew what he was talking about. But even Faye kept the secret from Kratos. He didn't even know this until this point. We don't know why just yet, why she would have kept it a secret, but I'm sure that we'll come to know about this in Ragnarok. But as mentioned previously, Odin hated the giants for whatever reason. He just did not get along with them and wanted them all extinct. He wanted that species wiped from the planet, which is why Odin knew that Faye was a giant, which is why he sent Baldur to try and find out more and find the gateway to Jotunheim, because that's essentially what he was looking for this whole time, with the god Tyr hiding that gateway to prevent Odin from going through, and that is basically the story explained. So it really does start to link together. Tyr is a big part but not present, Odin is a big part but not present, Baldur is a big part, but we didn't really know why until the end, and all is explained. So we reach the peak of the mountain together in Jotunheim. Kratos and Atreus scatter the ashes of Faye across the land of the giants, as we can see them all laying dormant in the distance. However, Atreus mentions that on the walls in the giant's temple, he's known as Loki for some reason. Faye wanted to call Atreus Loki at birth, but right now we don't know why that is or the reasoning behind that. However, Kratos insisted that the name Atreus would be the boy's name. The name Atreus came from the back of a Spartan that Kratos once fought alongside. he was unlike the rest. He was happy, an inspiration to all that served Sparta. He sacrificed and saved countless others, and was eventually killed in battle as a true Spartan would be. He was buried and honoured with all of the honours that a Spartan could have, and was remembered by all. We return to the temple and then make our way back to Midgard, and Mimir mentioned that we'd been gone a long time, with Jotunheim time essentially going faster than normal, meaning a lot had changed since we were gone. Winter is coming, one that will span over 3 summers, and after comes Ragnarok. When killing Baldur, we change something, resulting in another prophecy or something like that. This shouldn't have happened for at least another 100 winters, but here we are. Finally, Kratos and Atreus returned home, and they sleep and rest. However, suddenly, years into the future, they're both awoken by a terrible storm outside the cabin. They move outside and sprint outside the house to greet a cloaked figure standing there. Who is this figure, you asked? Well, take a guess. God of War Ragnarok begins with Kratos sitting slumped over a fire inside of a cave somewhere within Midgard. He's reminiscing over the bag which carried the ashes of his deceased wife Faye, still mourning her passing despite the events of the first game, with Ragnarok taking place a few years into the future from then. Atreus walks in with a deer that he'd recently caught hunched over his back, with both of them agreeing to go back home due to the weather becoming worse. As they load up the sled, Atreus pulls out an object of some sort that we're not too familiar with, trying to hide and keep it a secret from Kratos. However, as we're journeying home, Atreus spots an eagle in the distance, which suddenly transforms into a person. It was Freya. In the first game, the god before and killed Baldur was Freya's son. Freya cast a spell on Baldur to prevent him from feeling anything. The warmth, the cold, the touch of a woman, pain or anything, in order to just simply try and protect him. However, this only made Baldur hate Freya more, with Freya giving Baldur the option to kill her at the end of the game, but Kratos would not allow that to happen. From that point onwards, Freya would never forgive Kratos, not just for denying her of death, but for the grief it caused her in knowing that the man that killed her son is still out there. Freya has been hunting Kratos specifically for a long time, and Kratos simply refused to fight back due to the help that she gave us in the first game, like saving Atreus' life. We eventually escape the wrath of Freya and return to our home in Midgard. Atreus mentions that there's another wolf, Fenrir, that was severely sick and that it was Atreus' first wolf. Kratos and Atreus essentially captured and saved the wolves in their possession from a camp of rebels that were planning on eating them a while back. However, when Atreus gets to Fenrir, it was apparent that he was very near the end, and Atreus finally has to let him go. Fenrir died in Atreus' arms. However, once it did happen, a blue orb floated out of Fenrir's body. Kratos catches it with one eye, but says nothing more on the matter. Kratos walks inside the cabin whilst Atreus finds a place to bury Fenrir, when Atreus doesn't come back. Kratos and Ymir go searching for Atreus when suddenly they're attacked by a bear. It turns out that Atreus has the power to turn into different animals depending on his feelings. Anger and rage was the feeling at the time, so that's what he turned into. Completely uncontrollable at the moment. The three of them return back to the cabin to rest, when suddenly a storm hits.
The ball.
I come in? I have mead.
You would not find me good company.
No. I'm sure we'll find lots to talk about.
They rushed to the front door and when opened, are greeted with a cloaked figure standing there. Thor. It's really good to know that the Avengers were lore accurate when depicting this image of Thor. Thor asks Kratos if he can come in for a chat, Kratos being very, very wary of this. However, he eventually says okay, and Thor walks into the cabin and sits down, placing his hammer on the table. And just to show dominance, Kratos does the same with his axe. They both started talking to begin with, both very tense about the situation, with of course Kratos killing Magni and Atreus killing Modi in the first game, both sons of Thor. However, as the situation begins to get more tense, in walks Odin. They started by reiterating that they do not wish for war, that they will leave them both alone if they swear to not continue to look for the god Tyr. Odin tries to put it down as Tyr being dead, to try and stop Atreus from looking. However, Atreus was secretly searching for Tyr without Kratos knowing, due to his connection with the giants and his desire to find out more about the shrine that he found in Jotunheim. Atreus wants the giants to repopulate Jotunheim again, and he thinks Tyr could help with this, help find out more about himself, and for Tyr to lead the army of the giants against Odin, and take him down for good.
Isn't it? So what do you say?
No.
Don't take all day.
About time.
Kratos declines this offer from Odin, and Thor strikes him with his hammer, and they fight off into the distance. However, during this time, Odin decided to stick around and speak with Atreus, telling him more of how he could help him get the answers that he's looking for, and that if he ever wanted help finding them, to meet Odin in Asgard. Atreus is a young kid that wants nothing more than to find out his overall meaning in life, and more around his shrine and the prophecy, so of course this is going to intrigue him. However, now that Odin and Thor know of their home's location, it is not safe there anymore. Sindri and Brock invite them into their home, and stay low for a while until they can figure out what the next steps are. At this time though, Atreus brings up the meaning behind the artifact that he was holding at the beginning of the game. He found it in one of the shrines, and Mimir mentioned that it was the craftsmanship of the giants. This shrine revealed that Tyr, the Midgardian god of war, and the god who helped the giants, was imprisoned somewhere. However, the location was not revealed within the shrine. Brock and Sindri inform us of a dwarf based in Svartalfheim, a dwarf named Durlin. Durlin was at the forefront of a rebellion against Odin, with Faye helping to lead that rebellion. We travel to the realms of Svartalfheim and meet with Durlin, who could immediately recognise the blade on Kratos' back, believing that he and Atreus had killed Faye, knowing that it was Faye's axe, and not knowing that she was Kratos' wife. In knowing this, Durlin presents Kratos and Atreus with a fine, in which bewilds the two at the time. However, when exiting the house, Atreus checks this fine, and finds that it is in fact a map of a nearby mine. The mine in which Tyr could be held captive in by Odin. Kratos, Atreus and Mimir make their way up through the mountain and into the mine, breaching through 4 green doors, when finally they find what they're looking for. Tyr. Tyr was weak, fragile, and not the god that he once was, not believing in violence and not wanting any part of what they're preaching to him. He was kept captive by Odin for an extremely long time, being tortured for his axe and not revealing the path to Jotunheim, so you can see why he was a bit skeptical. Kratos grabs Tyr and gives him the talking to that is needed at the time, saying that we've come all of this way for you, and my son believes in you. So in doing so, Tyr returns with us to Brock and Sindri's home. However, Tyr insists that he would prefer to sleep inside a broom closet in the house, saying that he's used to the pitch black dark and wants to be there and doesn't want to take up any more space than what's needed. This seems really odd, you know, with Tyr being a god, but more on this later. In this section of the game, we take control of Atreus for the first time, which I thought was really, really cool. The next step was very blurred, with no one really knowing what else to do or where to go from here. Atreus takes Sindri to Midgard in order to try and speak to Jormungandr, the World Serpent. This was to try and find out more around the meaning of Loki, and where they need to go next. Atreus summons the World Serpent from under the thick layer of ice, in which he responds with Ironwood. Not knowing what this meant at the time, the two were very frustrated and thought that they'd wasted a trip there. However, Atreus decided to try his luck speaking with Freya. She only wanted to kill Kratos, so he might be able to reason with her, and maybe even talk Freya into taking their side in the fight against Odin, and helping them find answers. Freya, though, was not of the same mind frame. She listened to what Atreus had to say, even at times looking pretty shocked, but resulting in the same resolve.
Leave this place. Go and do not return. Go before I change my mind. Do not expect the same mercy for your father.
We return back to Midgard, where positive progress was made around next steps. There was a god named Groa in the realm of Alfheim, which would potentially provide us more information on the prophecy and what we needed to do next. The shrine revealed to us that the prophecy that Odin was working from was in fact wrong, and that Odin is working off a lie. Groa had a vision when meditating one time for weeks on end. She was trying to find her lost husband, Freya's brother. Their parents were very creative when choosing their names. It was during this vision that Groa had the vision of Ragnarok. Word of the vision reached Odin, and Odin demanded a private retelling of the vision. Odin didn't like what he heard relating to Ragnarok, and he killed Groa. It was at this point that we see Ironwood mentioned there. This was the same phrase that Jormungandr mentioned to us earlier. Ironwood is a mythical sanctuary for the giants. However, Ironwood has never been found, and it's not known to anyone, even Mimir, stating that it's just not a real place. We also get a glimpse of the champion of the war, which Atreus believes is him, eventually showing Ragnarok, a battle between each of the 9 realms, all gods and all beings. However, it then moves to show someone leading the forces against Odin. However, Tyr does not want war, and finds it hard to come to terms with that he could be again the god of war. However, suddenly the vision shifts, and no one has seen this side of the prophecy before. The giant of Ragnarok destroys Asgard, leaving the other 8 realms to thrive, and Odin to die. Groa lied to Odin. The vision was false, and the prophecy that Odin's searching for is incorrect. They all return back to Brock and Sindri's house, where Atreus goes into his room to sleep. However, before closing his eyes, he pulls out the giant artifact from the beginning of the game, closes his eyes and says Ironwood. Atreus falls asleep, but suddenly wakes up somewhere extremely unfamiliar. When here he encounters all of his older memories from the first game, going through the phase of his resentment between him and his father, his pure cockiness as well.
I mean, just knowing we're gods makes me feel so much stronger.
Where am I?
It's all you ever talk about, over and over. Do something about it or shut up already.
Little people's little
We're
problems.
sick of hearing about little people's little problems.
Memories. And not nice ones.
You broke the gate. That was our only way to Jotunheim.
What do you want?
Let's go, Truma.
I don't understand.
Whatever. Whatever.
Hey, don't run off!
When suddenly, he falls through the ground, and moments later finds himself in a place surrounded by wildlife, somewhere that he's never been before. He's escorted to a location by a pack of wolves when he meets Angraboa. Angraboa's prophecy is to tell Atreus of his prophecy, so she takes him back to her home and shows him the rest of the shrine that was destroyed in the Jotunheim temple. However, it wasn't what he was expecting, nor what Atreus wanted. The prophecy shows him holding his father in his arms, with Kratos ending up dead at the hands of Thor and Odin, with Loki eventually going to work for Odin. Atreus snaps and turns into a wolf, trying to channel his rage and destroy the shrine. The missing piece of the shrine in the Jotunheim Tower did not show this final part, the death of his father and Atreus going to work with Odin. Angrboda had one more thing to show Atreus though before he left. She took Atreus to the location in Jotunheim where we could see the temple that we travelled to at the end of the first game. However, she explained that Jotunheim is in fact not full of bodies of dead giants like we thought it probably was at the end of the first game. As you can see on screen right now, it looks very much alike, but rocks making you believe that it is. Jotunheim is full of rocks to make you believe that it's full of giants' bodies that just lay dormant and dead. This is so that if Odin ever wants to come to Jotunheim, that he would take a look and believe that all the giants here are in fact dead, but really, it's just rocks, without giving him additional reasons to go further and investigate. It's pretty sad, to be honest, with the people of Jotunheim. We reach one of the rocks and Angrboda hands us a bag. This bag contained a bunch more of these marble type things that we'd found from the first shrine. These were not created and left by the giants. These things are the giants. The giants unfortunately didn't really have a choice. They could stay in Jotunheim to wait for Odin to find a way in and just slaughter them, or they could hide in these marbles. It's within these marbles that they find peace in not being hunted anymore. Their souls are within these marbles and their bodies are just left to rot and die away. These souls can be passed into creatures or bodies with no souls within, like we see later into the game when one of the souls were passed into a snake. This was huge power given to Atreus, and he didn't want the responsibility to do that. So he gives them back to Angrboda and says that he wants her to take them for now. However, before Atreus left Ironwood, Angrboda gives him one final marble, and it was his mother's marble. Unfortunately though, there was no soul within it due to her dying within her body in the first game, but it was better in his hands. However, before Atreus left Ironwood, Angrboda told him that he must not tell anyone about Ironwood, even his father. If Odin found out about it, he would find his way into Ironwood and ultimately Jotunheim, and that is real bad news. Atreus returns home to the cabin, and when trying to move through the portal, Kratos was standing there, happy to see Atreus but also furious at the same time. It turns out that Atreus was gone for 2 whole days, which only felt like a couple of hours to him, as ultimately time moves faster in Jotunheim. However, they were suddenly both ambushed by a Valkyrie, which turned out to be Freya. Kratos didn't fight back once he found out who it was, with Atreus even turning into a bear just as Freya was about to kill Kratos. However, Kratos jumped into action, saving Freya from being mauled by Atreus as a bear. Freya turned around in disbelief that Kratos would save her like that, essentially risking his life to do so. Freya decided instead to use Kratos to help free herself, but instead of killing Kratos, she decided that he was more used to her alive at this time, using him to free herself from the spell that Odin cast upon her, binding her to Midgard. Freya and Odin were once married a long time ago, and to prevent her from travelling to other realms, he cast a spell on her. And that was what we'd seen in the very first game. She was unable to come with us to Alfheim due to the spell that was binding her, which was the reason why she was ripped away. We take a trip to Valheim, progress through and free Freya from the spell binding her to Midgard. And upon returning to camp, she's finally reunited with her brother, Freya. Freya left when he'd found out that 1. Odin had killed his wife Groa, and 2. Found out that Freya was marrying him. He never went searching for her because he thought that she was dead. But really she was just bound to Midgard this whole time, so could never move between realms. However, they both forged a plan to work together to take down Odin. We return back to the cabin and Kratos tries his best to get out of Atreus where he was and where he's been. But Atreus was unable to say anything about Ironwood. All the characters in the house were all pushing Atreus to tell him where he'd been, telling Atreus that if he was in Asgard, that Odin is bad news, and he's using him to get to his end goal, in which Atreus responds, "So am I." Atreus at the time cannot tell anyone about Ironwood, so with the rest of the group connecting the dots and with Odin inviting him into Asgard, that's where they all believe that he went. Atreus angers at the accusations and turns himself into a bear, going through the portal and landing into Midgard. However, as he's walking through, we can hear the sound of ravens in the distance. He eventually finds Odin's personal raven and says he's ready. Take me to Odin. Atreus ends up in Asgard and begins to climb the Great Wall. At the top, he's greeted by someone named Heimdall. Heimdall didn't believe Atreus was here to see Odin for a second, and even almost dropped him to his death at the very top of the wall. However, he gave him the benefit of the doubt and took him to Odin's lodge. Heimdall began toying with Atreus. Heimdall cannot be touched by anyone, bearing in mind. He can essentially see your every move even before you can see your move, until Thor turns up. Heimdall stands down, however, proceeds to tell Odin that he believes the boy is fake. He believes he's there to betray him, in which Odin replies, "Of course he is. He has no reason to trust me yet." Odin shows us around Asgard, the camp, the training of the soldiers, and even how he has an unlimited army. A soldier will go to Valhalla when he dies in battle, then drop straight back down into Asgard, where Odin recruits them back to his army, resulting in an endless cycle of troops. Odin gives Atreus his own room, which used to belong to Magni, the son of Thor, which Kratos killed in the first game, so it's pretty bittersweet to be honest. This is where we meet Thrud, Magni and Modi's sister, the daughter of Thor, and also Sif, Thor's wife. We meet up with Odin once settled, and he informs us of his overall plan, and why Odin wants our help. Odin states he doesn't want Ragnarok, war, or the end of the world, but something that could give them the answers to everything. Answers to why the gods were here, learn how to change their fate, save the people they love, and much more. Of course, this is right up Atreus' street. He knows the overall prophecy and the end goal, and he knows that his father, in the shrine, is gonna die. So if he can change that fate and save his father, of course he's gonna work with Odin. And Odin knew that this plays straight into his hands, and we'll know why a little bit later on into the video. Odin, as a young god, found a piece of a mask that will let you look into the crack of time, which was situated under his log cabin. The mask is required. However, the mask is 100% required to do this, as when Odin tried to do this without the mask, he lost his right eye. The task that Odin needs from Atreus is to recraft the mask and make it into its full form. They need to make it whole again so that they can look within the crack and find as many answers as they can. This is what is driving Odin, and this is why he needs Atreus' help. This will give him the ability to change the prophecy as he sees fit, which could be catastrophic in his own right. We are sent on a mission to find the first piece of the mask with Thor in Muspelheim, and this was a success. However, during this time, we find another shrine in the distance, so we trick Thor into doing something else whilst we sneak off and look inside it. It was there that we met Angrboda again. She decided to rewrite her own prophecy and search for more of the giant's marbles within these shrines, so she's travelling the 9 realms. It was within this shrine that they found how Ragnarok is formed. The gods of Muspelheim, Samara and Suta combine and form a large creature known as Ragnarok. They find the part of the mask they're looking for and return back to Odin, where they finished their first mission together. We move back to the perspective of Kratos. They are all in conversation about what to do next, and Freya comes to the conclusion that war in Asgard is what she will follow if that's what the prophecy states. However, Tyr is not prepared to go down this route, with there being countless innocent lives lost in the process just because of a prophecy. There must be another way. Freya has the idea to speak with a species called the Norms. The Norms are a species who know of the prophecy and can recite it well. They can predict your every word, even ones you're not thinking at the time. However, they're also a species that don't want to be found. Kratos wants to ask the Norms how to find his son, and if there's any way to get him back from Asgard, and even to change the fate of the prophecy. We finally reach the Norms after searching long for them. The Norms talk to us about the prophecy, that Kratos will die, and that Heimdall will try to kill Atreus in Asgard. They leave and make their way back to the house with this new information. Kratos informs the group that Heimdall will try to kill Atreus, and that we must do what we can to stop it. However, the problem is, Heimdall can see your every move even before you know it yourself. How is anyone supposed to combat that? However, Brock and Sindri believe to know a way, and that's to use something called Dropnir. This mineral was stolen by the dwarves a long time ago, and was done to keep it away from Odin, with him having so much influence over Svartalfheim. Why will it help kill Heimdall? Well, when it's combined with another mineral, it can be thrown and detonated remotely by Kratos or the person that's using it, stunning Heimdall, allowing Kratos to attack him and essentially kill him. Heimdall isn't only Odin's right-hand man though, he also carries the horn in which begins Ragnarok, the Gjallarhorn. We take these minerals to the forge in Svartalfheim, specifically though to the Lady of the Forge. Once we get there, we walk into a lift, which descends under the water. It was here we met the Lady of the Forge for the first time, and she crafted a spear out of the ingredients that we gathered. We return back to the house with the spear, and switch back to the perspective of Atreus in Asgard. Odin had another mission to retrieve another piece of the mask, and to accompany him doing this was Thrud and Heimdall. They visit Helheim and follow the mask throughout, until they reach their destination, guarded by a huge wolf named Garm. Garm was chained up, and Atreus thought that he knew what to do here. He thought he knew what Garm wanted, and that was to be free. If Garm was free, they could just walk straight past him and get the mask. Without knowing why he was chained up probably wasn't the best idea. Atreus and Thrud free the wolf, and to their surprise, a dead end. We return back and meet with Heimdall, who explains why Garm was chained up. It was because the wolf is able to create tears between the different realms, allowing things from Helheim to move between the realms and infiltrate them and cause chaos. This means that the enemies of Helheim are going to be able to move between the different realms now with no problems at all. We return to Asgard and Odin confronts us on what we've done. We tell Odin of the mistake that we've made and advise that we just want to go home now. We use Odin's ravens and it takes us back to our cabin. As we step through the portal though, there was a tear in between realms from Helheim to Sindri's house. This was because Garm tore a hole from Helheim to our current location, resulting in an attack. Freya and Atreus close the hole and he is reunited with his father. Atreus tells the group of his mistake when freeing Garm, stating he had no idea of the damage that it would cause. So Kratos tells Atreus that he will go to Helheim with him and fix this mess, which is exactly what they did. Atreus and Kratos both reach Helheim, and they both defeat Garm for the first time. However, a short time later, he comes straight back. It was later found that there's no killing Garm, because he has no soul to kill. He just keeps coming straight back, regenerating his health back to full. Atreus has an idea though. Like the snake earlier on in the game, he decides to transfer a soul into Garm. But not any soul. Fenrir. At the beginning of the game, we spoke about that blue light that appeared once Fenrir died. This was Atreus transferring Fenrir's soul into his knife, which he didn't know he was doing. Atreus had no idea there was a soul in his knife until Angrboda told him in Ironwood, and this is where he got the idea from. Once he did this, Garm ran off, and then found him under a cavern in Helheim as we progressed through near to the exit. Atreus approached Garm, at first very timid and very wary, but then it was truly Fenrir, just in a completely different form. Kratos as well couldn't believe it, as well as myself. It was awesome, to be honest. Of course, Fenrir couldn't stay here, so Kratos instructs Fenrir to go home, in which he tears through the realms and goes back to the cabin. We make our way back to Brock and Sindri's house, and Atreus spends a bit more time showing everyone what Odin's up to. Atreus mentioned the mask, and Mimir mentioned that it was just a dead end, that it wasn't really anything special. However, when Tyr looked at it, he said the mask has great significance. It's a way to gaze into the secrets of creation itself, a way to find out the purpose behind everything and everyone, becoming one with a source of infinite knowledge. This was the reason that Odin tortured Tyr. However, knowing that the prophecy states Kratos kills Heimdall, Freya wants to know if we should focus on killing him right now or not. Even if he was, how would we get to Asgard? Kratos doesn't want to return to the person that he once was. He does not want to be a killer of gods anymore, and he tries his best to rewrite fate by seeking alternative routes to killing Heimdall or just not killing him at all. Freya decides that if we don't take the fight to Odin, that she's going to return to Vanaheim in the meantime to help her brother prepare for the battle against Odin, should he ever return there. Kratos and Atreus also decide to follow and help in any way that they can. However, just like fate, there's Heimdall in Vanaheim. Kratos and Heimdall fight, utilising the spear that was created by Brock and Sindri, and it worked. Kratos was the first person to ever hit Heimdall, in which he took him down. Despite defeating Heimdall though, Kratos didn't want to be that god killer anymore and decided to spare Heimdall's life. However, Heimdall found it insulting that Kratos didn't finish the job and fought back and eventually left Kratos with no choice but to kill him on the battlefield. We return back to Brock and Sindri's home where we discuss what happens next. Now that Heimdall is dead, it's only a matter of time before Asgard finds out. So Atreus uses this time to revisit Odin and find the final piece of the mask. Odin requested that we go with Thor on this journey, however we had to fetch him first. Thor was drunk and left in a bar. Thor was essentially an alcoholic and passed the time by drinking away his sorrows of his childhood and his life right now. So we tried to get him out of the bar, and in doing so we started a bar brawl. He eventually gets out and comes with us, even if he was being sick along the way. We finally find a piece of the mask that we were looking for, and suddenly Odin appears out of nowhere, along with Sif and 2 Valkyries. Sif found out that Heimdall was in fact killed, and Sif then goes on to talk Thor into wanting to kill Atreus for 1, killing Heimdall, and 2, killing Magni and Modi along with Baldur. Atreus was given a one-time use device by Sindri before he went into Asgard. If he wanted to get out and go back to the location of the home at any given time, he just throws it on the floor as hard as possible. Luckily he had that because he needed to use that right now to escape Thor's wrath. And he did that and was back at the Realm Tree where Kratos was waiting for him, and they went back to the house. They returned back to the house and discussed what had happened. Atreus got no real answers from the completed mask, meaning all he really did was steal Odin's greatest treasure, just after Kratos killed his most loyal ally. Freya wants to start the war now. However, again, Tyr is very against doing so, not wanting to kill every soul in Asgard just to get one man. Tyr then goes on to say that the plan is staring us clear in the face. We should slip into Asgard ourselves and use the mask to figure out what it means. We can do it right under Odin's nose without him even knowing. We can gain the knowledge to shatter the prophecy and end the war once and for all. However, how do we get into Asgard? We can't use the Gjallarhorn, as it sounds across all of the realms. They'd see us coming. Atreus thinks looking into the mask is a good idea though. We can forge our own path and get the answers and stop the war. Then nobody has to die. But again the question, how do we get into Asgard undetected? Tyr stands and steps forward and says that he knows he's been a burden to us all, even though we've saved him from imprisonment. But he's now ready to step forward, picking up his spear one last time, and Tyr will lead them to Asgard. Brock immediately fires back with a question. If you've got a way into Asgard, where's this idea been the entire time? Kratos and Mimir state the same thing back to Tyr. Why would he withhold Asgard from us, and why is it only coming up now that the mask is complete? He states it's because it would have gotten everyone killed, and we needed time for Loki to find his destiny. The mask. Everything led to this. If the mask doesn't work out, we'll still have the drop on them because we'll be there with surprise. But then again, Brock fires back. Brock wants to know of this new way into Asgard. Tyr mentioned that it's an ancient path and it can't be reached from here, but Brock is having none of it. Where then? And why is he walking off with the mask? That's the boy's property. He earned it. Tyr said he's going to collect his things, but Tyr has no things. He didn't come with anything. He was a prisoner for centuries. Nothing is welding together correctly here. Why is Tyr calling Atreus Loki? He's done nothing but make food. He's never fought with us, and also turns up late when we do. And when the battle's finished, he turns up with his shield, almost like he was somewhere else when it was taking place. He's never around when Atreus is in Asgard. So what's going on? Tyr turns around and stabs Brock straight in the stomach. However, it wasn't Tyr all this time. It was Odin. Odin takes the mask and tries to get away. However, just as Odin disappears, Kratos throws his spear through the eye of the mask and pierces it to the wall. Brock dies on the floor, in Sindri's arms. Tyr was never really there. Odin played Atreus this entire time, and the rest of the group. He knew that Kratos refused the offer at the beginning of the game. He knew that Atreus would continue his search for Tyr. which is why he used this to his advantage, to find out their every move and to shapeshift himself into Tyr's form. This was why Odin was so calm about Atreus being in Asgard this entire time. He had a gateway to both sides. Odin was using Atreus to build the mask and to look into this crack of knowledge, whilst at the same time finding their entire plan, whilst Atreus and the rest of the group thought that they were against Odin and outsmarting him. He really played them here. He was there when they were looking into all of the shrines and found out that Groa lied as well, so he was well versed on this new prophecy. Kratos hands the Galahorn to Faye, and both him and Atreus walk out of the house and return home. They both take some time away to grieve and mourn the death of Brock, before returning to the house to plan their next steps. This was it, the home stretch. Ragnarok is coming, and we need to be ready for it. The group gathered around the table in Brock and Sindri's house to form a plan as to how they were going to attack, how they were going to find and finally defeat Odin and destroy Asgard. The group are going to unite all of the realms against Odin. They've now completely lost the elements of surprise, as Odin now knows everything that they were planning, with him being in the form of Tyr this entire time. However, this will not stop them. They need to forge an army of their own, an army that spans across all of the other 8 realms. We need to still get past that huge wall protecting Odin's camp, the Wall of Asgard. In order to do this, they need Suta. Suta is the god of Muspelheim, along with his wife, Samara. Suta is the god that will turn into Ragnarok, and essentially destroy Asgard like we see in Groa's visions, just as it's shown in the shrine. Hildisvini, the boar that was shot in the first game, who is now human and friends with Freya, will travel to Helheim to recruit the army of the dead. Freya will return to Alfheim to reunite the elves, light and the dark, even after centuries of war. And Freya will return to Vanaheim to find Sigrun, to muster all of the 3 Valkyries of that realm. That only leaves Svartalfheim. Sindri is still mourning the death of his brother, however he agreed to help. Freya picks up the Galahorn and hands it back to Kratos. We get Suta and tell him of the plan to summon Ragnarok. However, when we get to Suta, he says that he doesn't want to help. This is because he knows of the prophecy already, and he knows what must be done to combine himself and Samara together to form Ragnarok. But he doesn't want Samara to die, so he forges together another plan. The Blades of Chaos Kratos holds on his back are filled with primordial fire. This will be enough to start Ragnarok. So, Suta leads us to the spark of the world to begin the process. We move to the edge and place the blades into the heart of Suta. This then starts the process of Ragnarok. We return to Midgard and make our way to Tyr's temple, where all of the gods of the realms are situated, just waiting for Ragnarok to happen. Freya looks to Kratos and says that she wants him to be the general, to lead the armies into battle. This is not who Kratos wanted to be remembered by, but having an experienced general leading them into battle, there will be nothing better than that, and it will probably help them to go on and win this war and make those difficult decisions in those difficult times. Kratos sleeps on it and in the morning agrees to be the general leading the armies into the battle. Kratos leads the rest of the army into Tyr's temple and blows the Galahorn, marking the beginning of Ragnarok.
Ready yourselves.
We enter into Asgard through the temple and see all of the surrounding realm towers there too. This scene was so cool, it literally reminds me of that ending Avengers Endgame scene. It was just so sick. You see the giant serpent in the background, you see Ragnarok in there as well, all the dragons flying around, all the different enemy types you fought throughout the first game, the second game. It was just, this honestly was one of the best fight scenes I've played in a long time for gaming, so well done, team. However, it was found that Odin has a series of war machines set up and ready, waiting to destroy any towers that will show up, trying to shut out Ragnarok. This was the first objective when we got there, destroy the war machines. We get to the Svartalfheim tower, and there's no sign of the dwarfs anywhere. Sindri comes through though, however, and says that no more dwarfs are dying for this. Odin forced them to build these war machines, and he knows a way to take them down on his own. Still very bitter with Kratos and Atreus for leading Odin into his home and killing his brother, as obviously everyone can imagine and appreciate. However, suddenly, there comes Ragnarok. Odin's war machines are trying to stop them, but Sindri destroys them, allowing him to progress further. However, in doing so, we see a bunch of Midgardians that Odin took in. Odin was using them as collateral damage, basically placing them there to die, slowing down Kratos and his army from getting to him, knowing that they would rather try and save them or have to go straight through them. Kratos and Atreus forge a plan to save the Midgardians, and try to take out Odin themselves, as they believed they could do that. However, one problem with that, they needed to slow down Ragnarok, so they needed to try their best to slow him down, which, as you can imagine, was not an easy task to try and do. Kratos and Atreus break the wall themselves and go after Odin. We finally reach the wall as Atreus, and there we find Thrud, who thinks that we've betrayed her. We tell Thrud that Odin has sacrificed the Midgardians to slow her down, and all of her friends that were there are most likely dead. Thrud doesn't believe us, but then out of nowhere, Sif walks in as well with one of Thrud's friends. This was her mother and Thor's wife. She walks around and explains the exact same thing as we were, that Odin is bad news and that he cannot be trusted. It was at this stage that Thrud joined our forces, and we make a stand and be better. We all partner together, break the wall, and push in to find Odin. We pushed her into the wall, and suddenly Thor comes flying out of nowhere, grabbing Kratos and pulling him towards the Odin's lodge, thinking that we're going to hurt his daughter or trying to combat her, not knowing that she's working with us, and that Sif also told her the same. Thor is just trying to do right by his father Odin, and not knowing the current situation. Unfortunately, we have to battle with Thor. He doesn't want to listen to us, even though we are trying to explain to him throughout the battle that we're working to only take down Odin, and that Sif and also Thrud are working with us. In the end, when we defeat Thor, we talk to him and try and reason with him after we've beat him. We eventually actually got through to Thor and made him see clear that Odin was the monster here, and he needs to make his own choices, stand up to his father. For the sake of his children, he needs to be better. Odin then suddenly shows up questioning Thor why he's not killed Kratos. Thor stands proud and finally says no to Odin. However, in return, Odin stabs a spear straight through his heart, killing Thor for good, and he just whittles away. Odin picks up Thor's hammer and hits Thrud, whilst Kratos and Atreus are left to fight against him. We fight against Odin, and towards the end he bounds us to the floor, freezing us in place completely, and we're just not able to move. However, Freya comes out of nowhere and prevents Odin from doing anything by utilising a rope that Odin used to try and hang himself a long time ago, in which he found on a journey when speaking with the Norns. She had power at this stage, but suddenly Odin threw his raven at her, breaking the spell momentarily, which was enough for him to get the better of us, sending us crashing down into his basement. However, the mask is now completed, and Atreus is right next to the knowledge crack. This crack in time allows you to see and know all. Odin speaks with Loki. No more fighting, he says. This is your moment, Loki. This is your purpose, your prophecy. With Kratos also walking forward, stating that it's your choice, Atreus, on what happens next. Loki breaks the mask into two pieces, with him falling into the crack and lost to the world. Odin rages at this and attacks us for the second time. We fortunately get the better of Odin, in which Atreus tries to reason with him. Odin says that the crack was the way to make the Nine Realms better, a way to help people. But no, Atreus went back and said that it was all about you. never about the good of the people, saying that he had no choice but to kill Thor. There was no other option. Atreus said that you have to stop. You can choose to be better. With Odin simply responding, "No, I can't. I will never stop." He has to know what happens next. There was clearly no saving Odin here. So Atreus does something that, to be honest, we probably didn't expect. Atreus takes the soul out of Odin and places it into a marble that was created and housed the giants. There will be no afterlife for Odin. There will be no Valhalla because he died in battle. He will be placed in this marble for the rest of time. However, out of nowhere, Sindri takes the marble and smashes it. That's for killing his brother. Ragnarok finally reaches them. They need to find a way out of there immediately, else they're of course going to die and be destroyed along with the rest of Asgard. However, suddenly, there comes Fenrir and Angrboda to save the day. Freya decides to stay and hold off Ragnarok, whilst the others escape. However, Atreus was late to entering the portal as well, concussing him massively and resulting in him to be unconscious for a long period of time. As we can see, his father's rushing him to some care. We wake up in a Midgardian temple, and as we move through, we come across all of the people that we'd fought alongside in our journey, thanking them, and eventually getting to Angrboda and Fenrir. She tells us that she has something to show us, along with something to show Kratos also. We're led to the very top of the mountain range where Angrboda displays another shrine. Kratos walks forward to it, and then opens it. It turns out that Faye destroyed the final piece of the shrine in Jotunheim. She couldn't live with the death of the Kratos, and to have her boy move and work with Odin, so she did something completely unheard of, and went against her people and destroyed that section of Atreus' shrine, and changed the prophecy herself. The prophecy was Ragnarok, however, they allowed Kratos and Atreus to forge their own path to protect them both. So rather than Kratos dying to Thor and Atreus going to work with Odin, the path was changed so that Thor died to Odin and that we destroyed Odin. However, of course, this was secretly done because the Norms were still following the older prophecy. So Faye really saved the day here and saved Kratos and also Atreus. However, at the end of the game, Atreus tells Kratos that there are other giants out there in the shrines of different realms. He needs to go out there, find them and free them, and he needs to do this alone. Kratos gives Atreus his blessing, and he takes a new step into his journey of finding the giants and bringing them back to Jotunheim. Loki will go, but Atreus remains with Kratos. However, this was not it. Kratos circles the cave when he's left on his own, and finds the other side to the shrine. Kratos opens it, and this is Kratos' shrine. It showed his journey, all the way from Athens in Greece, all the way to the end, to right now. Kratos was the champion of the war. Kratos was the god of war, the god of the people, the general leading everyone to their victory, just as Kratos wanted it. He's no longer that god of war, that killer of gods that he was once known by, but now he's the god of the people, just like Tyr was to the giants. That is him to the Midgardians, that is him to the other realms. A path that he never imagined would be possible.
What did you see in there, brother? Well, one I had never imagined.
And what now?
There is much to do. Much to rebuild. Would you join me?
Aye.
We'll see to it. Together.
God, this looks so good. The God of War Ragnarok DLC begins with Kratos and Mimir making their way through the Valhalla Sea, surrounded by broken down monuments and rubble the further in they go. Mimir, however, has been here before, but remembers very little of this place. Well, anything that would be of help to Kratos anyway. Mimir asks Kratos what it is that they're actually doing here in Valhalla. Why did they make the journey across the realms to come here specifically? Well, Kratos says he doesn't really know right now, but we'll find out exactly why a little bit later on. Mimir told Kratos that the best person to speak to regarding Valhalla would be Freya. Odin always kept Mimir in the dark about this place, and well, Freya knows this place like the back of her hand, along with her Valkyrie sisters. However, Kratos mentioned that Freya doesn't seem eager to speak with him. What happened from the ending of Ragnarok till now? Kratos steers the boat to a nearby shore, and suddenly, something begins to happen. As Kratos steps off the boat, he grabs Mimir's head, and a glowing mist seems to appear around him. His once armor, well, it completely disappears, and he's now left with his original base armor set.
Back to basics then.
Kratos makes his way up a windy path, and is presented with a large door with glowing text hovering above it. Kratos interacts with the door, and it was locked. However, the text above reads,
Reatha Sialfur, Sinum Hautum.
To be one's own master.
Master thyself.
A more poetic way of putting it, but yes.
Kratos decides to use brute force to open the doorway to Valhalla, in which he succeeds. This, however, angered Valhalla. Kratos cheated his way inside. Due to this, he was cursed.
Something is wrong. I feel weaker.
Valhalla may not appreciate our breaking in.
Kratos was stripped of his shield, health diminished to a minimal amount, and only his axe available for combat. We push through the next few doors. We see what looked like the last remaining parts of Asgard. What was Asgard doing in Valhalla? Kratos questions Mimir about Freya, however. Does he really think she would have helped us here? Mimir just thinks that Kratos is avoiding Freya, which is one of the reasons he left Midgard and journeyed into Valhalla. Kratos values Freya significantly. He doesn't intend on seeming as though he's avoiding her. However, he believes she doesn't understand the magnitude of what she asks of Kratos. What this ask is right now, we don't know just yet, but there's something really heated going on here. Kratos enters through a door and is faced with a series of armed guards, all utilizing the Bifrost to fight against Kratos. They got the better of him this time, and well, Kratos died in Valhalla. However, all wasn't lost. Kratos woke a short time later on the shore that he arrived on, with Freya and her 3 Valkyries following.
You marched into Valhalla without even talking to us first?
Nice to see you too, milady.
Freya was filled with anger. Reason 1 was because Kratos didn't tell her that he was going into Valhalla, and 2, this entrance to Valhalla was secret. No one could know about it. So how did Kratos find out about it? This was a very personal matter for Kratos. He pulls out a letter, one that was pinned to his door 3 days ago from this very day. The letter stated,
Kratos of Sparta, you are hereby invited to a challenge. Face the past, face the future. Master Valhalla, master thyself. And then directions here, no signature.
Who else knows of this entrance?
Odin and us. It's likely a trap.
You're thinking of going back in.
Would you join me?
Oh, don't let me intrude on your personal matter. Besides, I can't. Unlike the 2 of you, I've never died.
Freya was unable to accompany Kratos and Mimir into Valhalla. This was going to be a long, personal journey for Kratos himself. One that would test him emotionally, mentally, and one that's very much needed by the sounds of things. Valhalla is a place that draws from the memories of those who enter inside. In there, you are an open book. Anything from your past, even present, can be pulled from your mind and used against you to test you. Sigrun, however, was confused. How did Kratos get inside Valhalla? When we said that we forced it open, they all reacted exactly how you'd expect someone to react if you knew Kratos on a personal level.
How did you even get past the gate?
I forced it open.
With his bare hands.
He forced it open.
There's an easier way if you insist on going back in.
Mimir, however, before Sigrun helped us open the doorway, asked her when they might continue the chat they had a few days before now. She, however, didn't seem like she had the time to even contemplate that right now, shutting Mimir down and moving to open the doorway. For those that don't know, these were once together. They were once in love. There's always been that friction there between them since Ragnarok's story and since they reunited with one another. So I wonder what this conversation was all about. This wasn't, however, the only conversation that was hinted towards. Kratos mentioned earlier about Freya asking too much of him, and potentially he was avoiding her because of that. Freya here asks Kratos if he was still thinking about the matter they both discussed. Kratos responded,
I am.
Is that what this is? Guess I'll let you think, then.
It now made more sense to Freya. This Valhalla is exactly what Kratos needed to make his decision. Sigrun, Gunnar and Air started the ritual, opening the gateway to Valhalla. Kratos steps inside and the journey begins. Because Kratos entered correctly this time, there was no curse and he was fully equipped to carry on with his journey with a shield and his 3 weapons. As we move through the doors again, what Mimir thought was Asgard isn't a piece of Asgard at all. It was only bits taken from Kratos' memory of Asgard. However, now we start to learn more about what Freya and Kratos have been talking about, why he's so unsure and needed time to think. Freya is trying to put together a new peace council for the realm to ensure they're ran correctly, and we don't get another Ragnarok occurrence. Freya asked Kratos to be the general, the god of war, a part of the peace council. What better god of war is there out there suited to the job than the god of war that won Ragnarok, and doing so by trying to save as many lives as humanly possible? Kratos was very hesitant, however, as he held it before back in Greece. Freya and Mimir knew what happened in Greece. Kratos caused destruction, killed so many innocent people, and that's a version of himself that Kratos fears deeply and is ultimately afraid that he might turn back into that monster if he accepts the position. Kratos needs to be at peace with himself before he gives Freya a yes or a no answer. And that's what the journey is all about in Valhalla. Freya had the idea to form this council to bring peace across all of the remaining realms, to lead the council and share power with different people, such as Kratos as the god of war. A god of war's role in all of this is that, for example, another Odin came across. A god of war's role in all of this is that if, for example, another Odin came along and had their tribes and tribulations over authority, or tried to go against the council in some way, or tried to take over a realm, the god of war ensures that those conflicts have rules and enforces them as and when it happens, making sure both parties adhere to those rules and limit any wars taking place. If a war does break out, the god of war will march his army head on to stop them and restore peace to the realms, like we saw with Ragnarok. Kratos knows that Freya knows that she can count on him anytime he's needed. However, the title God of War is something that puts Kratos off this completely. Mimir understands this, however, but also tells Kratos that he must put his past behind him. This is not Kratos anymore. Just look at how he handled Ragnarok. Kratos' past is awful, it's disgusting even in some places. However, he's proven time and time again that he's not that man anymore. But Kratos, he still has those doubts. The path Kratos seeks, however, is forward and upward in Valhalla, and Kratos needs to continue onward. It's been a while since Kratos has had any action. Fighting, of course, probably the other way too, but we won't go there. But combat is definitely a way to get Kratos' mind off of things. Kratos pushes on through a doorway, it opens up, and suddenly, he's faced with a memory of his past. A throne.
What is this?
You recognize your old seeds, don't you? Kratos, I have not forgotten the debt I owe you.
In the background, however, a voice, followed by a piercing headache, that sends Kratos back to the shores of Valhalla, with Freya and Sigrun asking if he was done here. Valhalla works in mysterious ways. It will restore you after an honourable death in combat. However, anything beyond that, it makes its own rules. If you die by falling off the side of one of your memories, you are dead for good. However, our journey here is far from over. Kratos makes his way back inside the doorway of Valhalla to find out more about why he's here and who invited him here. This place works the same, however. Every time you're put back on the shores outside the gates, you're required to redo every step that you've taken, every single time, learning more about yourself each time you do it. Each time you unlock a new part of the story, a new tale, a new memory along the way. This will help us understand who brought us here. Valhalla, however, was different this time. Since unlocking that memory of the throne, everything has changed significantly. The fog completely cleared, and two huge figures, both from ancient Greece, holding a chain below a floating mountain appeared in the distance, along with all of the interconnecting islands around the place. Kratos recognized these two straight away. They're judges of the underworld from his homeland. Souls they deemed righteous were granted entrance into the Elysian Fields, which is essentially the Greek equivalent of the afterlife. However, those deemed wicked were cast into Tartarus, the infernal regions of ancient Greece. Why has Kratos manifested them here? However, going back to the memory of the throne, whose voice was that we heard? That voice was a god of Greece. He and Kratos didn't end on good terms. That throne was Kratos' throne. It was the throne he took from Ares, a throne of monsters and a symbol he rejects. Mimir says that the best thing to do is to reclaim the throne and redefine the way it's ruled. You can't change the past, but you can redefine your future. We enter through another doorway in Valhalla and hear the throne again, but this time the voice. Not only the voice, however, but the head of Mimir was replaced with Helios, an ancient Greek god that Kratos beheaded long ago. He was a sun god from Olympia. However, Kratos never mentioned this god before. This was a first. Kratos needed the power he possessed to kill Ares. Therefore, he gained it by separating Helios from his head. This wasn't Kratos' proudest moment. And Valhalla, well, it was using it as a tool to provoke him. Helios would go on to provoke Kratos here on out, egging him on, bringing back all of the horrible things that Kratos did and just reminding him of them. Kratos, however, fought back and told Helios that he was no longer that person. However, once a Spartan, always a Spartan. Kratos pushes through Valhalla when more and more of his past came into frame. The two judges holding the chain, and in the distance, remnants of Kratos' homeland, Greece.
Oh, there it is. Home sweet home.
Kratos makes his way across the platform and enters inside another doorway. This time it took him to another familiar place, a place called the Chamber of Sacrifice. Kratos let an ancient soldier burn to a crisp as a sacrifice long ago, just so that he could progress into the following room. This is Valhalla playing tricks on him, reminding him of what he was. However, we need a sacrifice to move to the next room. So Kratos places Helios' head in the cage and turns the lever to sacrifice him. However, just as we turn our back listening to Helios yabber on,
You haven't changed one solitary...
Brother? What am I doing in here?
Mimir,
Helios was no longer in this container, this cage. It was now Mimir. Valhalla was playing tricks on us. Kratos did all he could to force open the metal cage, narrowly escaping Mimir being burnt alive to a crisp, dying because of this action. Something happened when Kratos tried to pry open the gate. They both started falling in mid-air. Kratos was under the impression that they might just spawn back on the shore if they die. But Mimir doesn't think that's how it works, as Kratos effectively cheated Valhalla by pulling Mimir out. This was it, their sure death. However, out of nowhere, Sigrun?
Out of here! Sigrun! Mom, you're burning! I'm not supposed to be here!
Sigrun's wings was burning. She wasn't supposed to be in Valhalla, as she'd never died before. She, however, saved Kratos and Mimir from sure death. And here, Sigrun and Mimir had a bit of a moment.
Mimir!
Oh no! You poor thing, look at you. You shouldn't have done that.
Oh, heal, dummy. You and Kratos would not. But you're safe now.
Sigrun, I'm sorry. I've been so foolish.
Later, love. I need a moment.
Mimir apologizing for what he'd done, for being foolish.
We are forever in your debt.
As I will be forever in yours.
Both Sigrun and Kratos thank each other for their help, and Kratos makes his way back inside Valhalla to carry on with his journey, whilst Air heals Sigrun. Kratos made his way back into Valhalla and questioned Mimir. What happened to him when he was replaced with Helios? Mimir was moved to his own Valhalla, a place that he'd been before. In there he had a full body. He could walk, everything. He was transported to a forest-like place, one that he grew up in as a child. A place that Mimir enjoyed, to be honest. Kratos makes his way back up to the top of Valhalla and enters back into the doorway in Greece, taking him back into the chambers of sacrifice, with his good old friend, Helios. However, rather than placing Helios' head into the crate, this time Kratos stepped inside himself. He let the flames burn him, and he sacrificed himself. When Kratos did this, something incredible happened. He was teleported to an arena of some sort, one at the very, very top of Valhalla, and Mimir was there too.
Brother?
However, when Kratos turned around, there was a very unexpected person sitting behind him.
Tyr!
And I can confirm, ladies and gentlemen, this is the real Tyr and not an imposter.
The invitation was yours.
I would have signed it, but it was important you come here for your own reasons.
Then you're not an illusion.
Here in the flesh, old friend.
What do you want?
Tyr was the reason Kratos was here. That letter pinned to Kratos' door, well, that was from Tyr. Tyr knew what Kratos was wrestling with, what he was going through. He knows his pain, and he knows his dilemma. Tyr was the original god of war, in which the giants foreseen and would draw on their murals predicting in time that he would lead them through Ragnarok. Tyr was the god of war that would lead the giants and the different people of the realms in Ragnarok, and that was foreseen on the shrines and also the murals that the giants painted. And he did so way back during the reign of Odin, when Odin was hunting the giants. Tyr knows this pain all too well, the shame, the doubt. Tyr said that lifetimes ago he had the exact same dilemma. When he came to Valhalla and stepped through that door, all became clear. Valhalla was a necessary step in understanding his role in all of this, the greater good, understanding why he needed to become the god of war, and how he learned to deal with that. Tyr brought Kratos here because he knew he was going through the same thing. Freya asked him to be the god of war, and he was humming and ahhing about doing it because of his past. He knew what he was battling with in his head because Tyr did the same thing. So he wanted to help him prepare for what was beyond the doorway in this arena, when eventually he steps through. To do this, however, we need to fight and battle with Tyr to show him that we're ready. This was so unexpected, but so damn cool. I love this twist. We eventually best Tyr in combat, this time anyway, and he yields. Perhaps Kratos was ready to enter the doorway, so Kratos opens it and tries. However, when he does, his head, it begins to pain, no longer being able to take it anymore. He wasn't ready for what lay ahead. But Tyr was determined to help. Kratos woke a short time later on the shores. Time to do it all over again.
I am not ready.
Yet. But we will get you there.
Kratos walked through the doorway and found himself inside of a room, looking above an altar with a floating orange stone right in front of him. The stone descended into a pool of water, and a memory appeared just below. This was a familiar story to those that knew Kratos' legend. This was the day he sold his soul to a god of war, Ares. Kratos was the youngest Spartan captain in the army. He gained a reputation for his skills in combat, his command on the battlefield, but also his aggression. He was determined to never lose, and until that day, he never had. His men were fiercely loyal, however there just were not enough of them that day to win the battle. Compared to the thousands of barbarians he had to battle against, there was just not enough men to win. So, Kratos did the unthinkable. He pledged his soul to Ares. He gave him the blades on his back, but the cost of doing so would go on to haunt Kratos forever. The amount of people lost was described as grains of sand on a beach. Kratos approaches the two judges, and here collects the totem. He continues on to Greece and enters inside the doorway, and again we see and meet Tyr. This time, however, he had a couple of tricks up his sleeve. He collected a new set of armor and weaponry on his travels. Here we learn more around why Kratos carries this burden and why he pledged his soul to Ares. If Kratos didn't stop the barbarians, if he didn't do what he did, pledge his soul to Ares, their lands of Greece would have been overrun, completely ruined. Kratos saved his people in doing so. He acted based on what he knew then and not what was to come. Yes, the outcome of things were catastrophic in the long run, and pledging his soul to Ares was definitely not the best thing to do. However, if he didn't do such a selfless act, Greece would have been taken over completely and potentially completely destroyed. Kratos, however, wasn't ready either. He needed to continue on this journey, so back to the shore he went. But the process is working. Kratos is starting to feel progress, clarity, and he needs to see it through. The next object Kratos came across of the altar is a shield. This shield, however, belongs to Helios, and doesn't he make you know it? As we mentioned earlier, Kratos needed Helios' power to secure his vengeance against the gods. He believed there was no other way, that he didn't have a choice in the matter. However, killing Helios deprived Greece of the sun. Their homeland without sunlight, crops dying, constant rain and floods, and much, much more. Kratos' decision to behead Helios was not a personal one, but he knew him previously from the death, and his death brought him no satisfaction. When Helios was captured by the god of dreams, known as Morpheus, the lands fell into a darkness and were not restored until Helios' return, because of course Helios is a sun god. Kratos knew that this would happen, that Greece would be deprived of sun when he beheaded Helios. Tyr provides Kratos with another perspective on being a god of war. As we move through, there are many ways to lead. It doesn't have to be through destruction or war. Tyr believes that he could wield a better influence on the inside rather than the outside, which is one of the reasons why he accepted the role of being the god of war. Kratos can rule his way, Tyr could rule his way, ensure he doesn't become what he was before by setting parameters and rules to prevent that. We, however, face Tyr once again, and this time he pulls out another weapon from his travels. Tyr eventually yields, and here we see another memory. Tyr believes that Kratos was deeply hurt, however it was the way he handled it that caused problems. Kratos knew that he had to act to restore the sunlight to Greece, therefore he took Helios' chariot and put the sun back in the sky himself, and sacrificed himself in the process. He fell to his death, however was saved by Helios. This memory, however, happened before Kratos killed and beheaded Helios, but the history here is that Kratos' overall story is a complicated one. Kratos has learnt a lot since then. If he was in that situation now, he would have handled it completely different and more effectively. Kratos' actions and decisions of his past were not done on a personal level. Helios saved his life, but he had to behead him for the greater good of Greece, which was taking out the gods. Kratos, however, was sent back to the shores of Valhalla. He wasn't ready to go through the door just yet, and we speak with Freya, where she tells Kratos something that I think he definitely needed to hear.
Listen, I know I made you feel like we expected more of you than you could give, and I just want you to know, I'm not asking you to change how you are or who you are. We had to break the old world to build a new one. Picking up the pieces and putting them together stronger. It's a rare opportunity. You made a difference here. In some circles, a symbol of change. On many days, just knowing that you're a part of the Council is enough.
And other days?
You've earned a voice. How you use it is up to you.
The final object was a statue, a totem. This one was the most important one. This memory was a girl, one that reminded Kratos of his once daughter, described as a substitute daughter by Tyr. This girl was the key. This was the blacksmith story that Kratos told the gang many times. The blacksmith died protecting this girl because of what was inside of a box that he did not want Kratos to open. Kratos, however, killed the blacksmith and opened this box, seeking a means to kill Ares and break out of his soul bond contract that they had. And what was released, well, it pretty much turned all of the Greek gods crazy. Her name was Pandora. She reminded Kratos of his daughter that he lost in a village fire, a fire that he caused, instructed and ordered by Ares. Opening the box, however, was Athena's plan, and Kratos did not know the consequences of opening this box. We, however, meet Tyr for the final time. Tyr finally yields. This battle, by the way, took me 3 attempts, and it really was testing my patience. And well, an altar appears in the center.
When the evils of the box were purged, what remained was hope, which you chose to release back to the world.
Yes. After everything, you came back full circle to sacrificing yourself.
My death would have been just, but it was not to be.
Yes, you lived, and hope still lived inside you, from that day to this one. One might say you brought hope back to these realms after a long slumber. Box or no box, Kratos. Hope and fear and love and hate exist in every one of us. The question is, which will you choose to let guide your actions? Each choice we make shapes our world.
I see the truth of it.
And?
I believe I am ready to walk through that door.
Excellent.
However, Kratos was ready. He was ready to open the door and approach what was on the other side. When Kratos entered, he saw the throne. He saw himself all those years ago.
What can I say to you? I remember how it felt to take that throne. All that it meant. And all that it did not. A god of war. God of pain. Of suffering. Of destruction. And Owen said I chase redemption that I know I can never deserve. What does that make me? God of fools. A god of... hope. When all else is lost. You lost everything. And everyone. You became... There is no forgiving you. You chose! I chose. But now... should I, this same man, should I sit, take, proclaim, lead, place myself in service? In service? Should I lose everything and everyone? There's to be enough left inside so that I do not become you. I do not know. But I have hope. You are cruel and arrogant and selfish. But you are more than that. You have always been more than what others saw. You are more than that.
Well, looks like I missed everything. Did you find what you needed? Glad to hear it, brother. We're done here then, so, what now?
Now, I believe I would like to sit here for a while.
Kratos finally understood. He was finally at peace with his past, and at peace with his present. He was more than just a war general. He was exactly who he'd always wanted to be. He was a true god of war. Kratos exited the gates of Valhalla, being congratulated by Air and Gunnar as he walked toward the shores. Stood there, of course, was Sigrun and Freya. Kratos, however, had news for Freya.
Something must have happened in there.
I take it this is a good...
I will join you. I will try to be what the people need.
Good. I'm very pleased to hear that. And that you found what you needed here.
I could not have done so without my friends. I am grateful.
Valhalla is at your disposal, Kratos. If you have more you wish to work out, now or later, we will heed the call.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the main storyline of God of War Ragnarok Valhalla's DLC. The story itself begins as Kratos and Mimir go to enter Valhalla. Mimir wanted to continue on a conversation that him and Sigrun had both started at some point a few days prior to this point, with them both being here at the same time. However, Sigrun didn't want to hear about anything right now and shut Mimir down pretty quickly. Kratos, however, was conscious of this, and with him and Mimir building a closer bond with one another since the 2018 game, well, he wanted to know what was going on in Mimir's mind. Kratos asked what happened. The other night, Sigrun and Mimir were left alone in a cabin after Kratos dropped Mimir off there. They stayed up all night. Mimir told her stories, she told him secrets, and towards the end of the night, she even invited Mimir to watch her fall asleep, because of course Mimir doesn't sleep. The following morning, however, they took a boat along the Lake of Nine, and Mimir, well, he put his foot in it. Whilst on the lake, they rowed past Sigrun's family treasury, where we found out that she cursed her brother over forbidden love. And Mimir remembered at the time feeling grateful that the treasury was deep and buried underwater, where she could never see it again. However, in that exact moment, Sigrun turned to Mimir and said, Mimir, I think I might be smitten for you. I think maybe I want to kiss you." This threw Mimir off there and then, took him off guard, and Mimir was completely honest with her at this point. He told her his feelings for her there and then, and that his feelings for her ran as deep as Rand's Hall, and had been like that for the longest time, as long as they'd known each other. But it was at this point that Mimir felt inferior. He felt that he'd never been enough for Sigrun, and he'd never be able to give her what she deserved. After all, he was just ahead. Mimir told Sigrun that he didn't think he could give her what she needed, or love as a partner. Mimir couldn't bring himself to go ahead with it. He described it as, imagine knowing from the start that you're not good enough for someone, for that one person that you love, and slowly starting to see them also live out that realization of that truth, further and further as you go on. Mimir didn't want to be in that situation. It gave him chills to the bone. Mimir only presumed how she'd feel in the future. He never thought about how she felt now. Both of them have romanticized being with each other, but it's Mimir that has the lingering doubt. Mimir wants Sigrun to be with someone that she deserves, someone that will give her everything that she's always wanted and deserved. And Mimir, although he is the smartest man alive, he has serious doubts. But Mimir has major regrets over this, and Kratos believes he needs to believe in himself more and have some more self-confidence. However, earlier on in the story, Kratos and Mimir were free-falling in Valhalla to their sudden death, until Sigrun came out of nowhere to save them. Now, in order to enter Valhalla in general, you need to have previously died, or be injured in a way that would be acceptable to enter Valhalla and to be accepted in. And Sigrun was never either. She forced herself into Valhalla to save Kratos and Mimir. This could have damaged her chances of going into Valhalla when it was her time. Mimir, however, throughout this time, was on his own journey in Valhalla, alongside Kratos. Every time Helios would replace Mimir on Kratos' back, Mimir would be transported to his own Valhalla, one with much less combat, and one with much more interpersonal memories. His adventures with King Oberon would spark back from his youth, when he was in captivity as well, and his favourite thing of all, dreaming. He's missed dreaming because it's a relief. It projects your hidden desires, anxieties, like a Bifrost window staring into your soul. This was a reset for Mimir, and like Kratos trying to find himself, Mimir was also doing exactly that alongside him. There was one story in particular, one flashback that Mimir mentioned during his journey in Valhalla when we were with Helios and he was in her forest. Mimir was transported back to a forest and was reunited with his old boss, King Oberon. This was Mimir's first master, and this was the story that Valhalla had Mimir relive. Love was what King Oberon felt was the most important to him. One time, however, he led his entire entourage to a wedding between a Duke and Queen, which was organised as a part of a peace treaty, and this was based just outside of Athens, which I found quite interesting. However, the whole way there, King Oberon was bickering and arguing with his queen. Anyway, they settled down and they see a group of youths. King Oberon tells Mimir to grab a magical flower. He told Mimir that it was to help them find love and to help the youths find love with one another. But in reality, he used the flower on one of the women. And he did it to make his wife jealous. And he used it on himself. Mimir would go on to remember everything about his time with Oberon and return to the shores and tell Sigrun of what he'd been seeing and dreaming of, and how it was a good time for reflection and a time that he was able to stand up and leave on his own terms when he saw what King Oberon really was. But how did Sigrun and Mimir meet? Well, Sigrun had an ambition to transcend the physical plane and become a Valkyrie of Valhalla. She arrived from a place called Fortulund and began serving as Freya's handmaiden while she undertook training for the sisterhood, the Valkyrie. Mimir wouldn't speak to her, but he'd see her around the court, around Asgard. He always observed her, but never stemmed up the courage to walk over and speak to her. He didn't ever think they'd get on as well as they do. They first spoke long ago, back when Freya was the queen of Asgard. Freya was the type of queen that would build a culture around the place. It was a good time there. There would be musicians playing, poets, and contortionists here and there. On one occasion, Mimir took a seat waiting to watch a show, and all of a sudden, in walks Sigrun. And of all the places that she could have sat, she sat right next to Mimir. Mimir described her as looking as the most beautiful that she'd ever looked before, that he'd ever seen her. It was at that point, Mimir felt sick with anxiety, but as he started to speak with her, he started to make her laugh. That anxiety quickly diminished away. And the happiness he felt when he started making her laugh and seeing her happy, well, that's where he knew that it was true love. This was the perfect icebreaker, and after this they'd speak pretty much every single day, much and much more. She started introducing Mimir to people around Asgard as a really good friend to her. Kratos, however, at this point stopped Mimir and asked him if he was upset that she referred to him as a friend, referring basically to being friend-zoned, in which Mimir responded with the most elite response to this question. Tell me someone for whom's friendship means lack of love, and I'll show you someone who wonders why their lovers are never worth their time. I like that. I think that's a really, really good comeback. But why was Mimir so reluctant to tell Sigrun how he felt? Well, she was in the Valkyries. She was training. She had enough on her mind at that point in time that this would have just overloaded it. A unique, heartfelt friendship is what she could have endured at that time. He didn't want to ruin the chance or chemistry between them, so that's exactly how he left it. Sigrun, however, tells Kratos and Mimir that Valhalla is displeased with her. After breaking her way in to save Kratos and Mimir, Valhalla wants Sigrun to undergo a series of trials to reforge her loyalty towards it. Sigrun decided at this point to leave. Valhalla has penalised her, and she's not even sure if it will welcome her in death because of it. However, Sigrun is not regretful about her decision for saving Mimir and Kratos. Sigrun isn't sure if Valhalla is her priority, however. The costs and risks of what Valhalla would put her through, it's enough to make her question if it's really worth doing and question what's most important to her. If she can't answer that, then maybe she's not ready to reforge that trust just yet. Maybe she needs to focus on other things. Valhalla has a way of making you learn what you need to learn. A way of making you find out who you really are. Long ago, Sigrun gave herself completely to love and destroyed her family and her home. This is the reason she joined the Valkyrie and threw herself into service of Valhalla. But Sigrun doesn't just want that to be her path. She wants to find herself and figure out what it is that she actually wants to do next. Sigrun at this time made a decision. She, at this moment in time, decided to take a step back, travel, experience the realms and the lands of beyond, not as Valhalla's emissary, but as a person. Mimir offered to join Sigrun on this journey, but she didn't seem all too open in her answer, very hesitant to say yes. She didn't specify completely as a given answer to say no to Mimir, but it was the tone of her voice that suggested it. Mimir, however, knew the answer to that even before he asked. It wasn't an intentional way of him being rejected, but he knows that the true journey she seeks is one of self-reflection and one where she needs to become one with herself. Mimir being there would disrupt exactly that. She needs to take time to understand who she was without her wings. She slowly broke the news to Mimir, however, telling him she needed to do this without him. She needed to do it alone. It was tough for Mimir to hear and to take, but ultimately, he respected it. Helios accompanied Kratos for a period of time, and in that time, it was when Mimir was sent off to his own Valhalla again. This time, however, was different. There were no young youths there, no dukes or queens. However, he was still in possession of this love flower, and who did Valhalla present in front of him? Sigrun. With a few drops of this flower, Sigrun could have been in an obsessive love with Mimir, making him care more about him than anything in the world. But Mimir, however, did the right thing and crushed the flower with his bare hands, much to Kratos' delight. Mimir, however, tells Sigrun face to face. He tells her he wants to go and find herself. Mimir, however, tells Sigrun face to face. He tells her that he wants her to go and find herself. He's not going to be the one to hold her back, and if all she needs is for him to be let go, then he'll find a way to do that. He wants her to put herself first, and he can't wait to see the woman that she becomes after her journey's complete. Sigrun in this time was relieved, and said that arrangements were being made for her to be able to go on this journey. Mimir was understandably heartbroken, but Kratos here used the perfect example to put things into perspective. When Kratos met Faye, he was moulded into a better man, but when he lost Faye, he still didn't stop growing, evolving, and learning. Love turned Kratos into a better person, and this is not the end of Mimir. Sigrun, however, was near to her departure. She will wait on the shore for us to say her goodbyes.
So this is it then?
For now. For however long.
Good. I mean, I'll miss you more than I can say, but whatever we ever were, or weren't, or might have been if the timing weren't just so... I need you to know that it mattered. All of it. Knowing you helped make me a person I can stand to be. And all I want for you in exchange is... everything.
I can't imagine a world in which I don't end up very close with you, my love. But let me come back to you whole. Let me come back not needing anyone to tell me what I need to be happy.
I can't begrudge you getting to know yourself. After all, it's been one of the great pleasures of my life.
Farewell, Sigrun, and good luck.
Thank you, Kratos. Farewell, my friends.
Fair winds, my love.
Well, that was the emotional story of Mimir and Sigrun. This, I think, will point towards what's potentially going to happen after God of War Ragnarok Valhalla. That's not only this one person that's went on a journey to find themselves. Tyr did the same thing and ended up in Valhalla. Sigrun is also going to do the same thing and journey far beyond these lands, not as an emissary for Valhalla, but as a person. And I think this is where the next game will really come into fruition, or the next DLC, if there will be one, where we potentially are hinted again at additional places that these characters and these different people are visiting across the world, and not just across the 9 realms. Of course, ultimately, let me know your thoughts and opinions down below, but I definitely do think that Santa Monica are trying to play with us here and toy with us, And I'm all for it, to be honest. I love the chase, and I love the detective work to try and figure out what the hell is going on. Ladies and gentlemen, that is going to be it for the story explained for God of War 2018, God of War Ragnarok, and of course the free DLC, God of War Valhalla. 3 absolutely brilliant stories, and I loved every single one of them. I've got to say that I'm really looking forward to the next God of War game coming out. I'm a massive fan of the series, I'm a massive fan of the franchise, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where they go next. What happened to Atreus? Where's he gone? Why have we not seen him yet? Will he be travelling? Where's Tyr? Where's Sigrun? What is Kratos going to be next as the war chief? You know, Freya and her new peace council across the 9 realms. How is that going to expand to another mythology? The new gods and the new antagonists and even the new protagonists we're going to get. What happened to Sindri? That is a massive story arc that we don't know what's going to happen next. With Brock dead, Sindri just vanished. He was so upset after Ragnarok going into it and going to his brother's funeral. Like, that was one of the biggest parts of that game. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what Sindri's going to do in the next game. If he's going to be in the next game, you just don't know. But, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to be it for this video. I really hope you have enjoyed. If you have, leave a like. It'd be so appreciated. Subscribe as well to the channel if you're brand new. We do so much story explain content here on the channel. This is a story-based channel. God of War has obviously been a massive part in that, along with other things like Halo and things along those lines too. But when new games do come out, we do try to cover them. But also, as you see, go back and doing older games as well, which, if you're into that sort of stuff, this is the place for you. So, subscribe, stick around. It'd be much appreciated. But guys, have a great rest of your day. Speak to you all soon, and take care.